My name is Emma, and if there's one moment that changed how my entire family saw me, it was the night my own mother called me the most useless child we have. I was 26 at the time, sitting at a long mahogany dining table in my parents' house. It was supposed to be a simple family dinner, the kind that happened once a month where everyone dressed up, exchanged polite smiles, and pretended to be close. My mother was at the head of the table, as always, elegant, composed, and sharp-tongued. My father sat beside her, quietly sipping his wine, and my two older brothers were cracking jokes as if they were the only stars of the show. I had learned over the years to keep my voice down during these dinners. No matter what I said, someone would find a way to mock it. So I mostly listened, nodding politely, half present, half drifting off into my thoughts. But that night something was different. My mom had invited some extended relatives, people I barely knew, and she was clearly trying to impress them. She loved playing the role of the perfect mother with the perfect family. The conversation shifted toward everyone's accomplishments. My eldest brother, Daniel, had just bought a new house. My second brother, Ryan, was bragging about a recent promotion. My mom beamed with pride at each story, clapping lightly, adding little comments to make them sound even more impressive. Then someone turned to me. "And what about you, Emma? What have you been up to lately?" It was my aunt, smiling politely, but with that sharp curiosity relatives always have. Before I could even open my mouth, my mom waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Emma, she's not doing anything extraordinary." Her voice was sweet, but the words cut deep. A few people laughed politely, unsure how to react. I tried to speak, to mention the tech startup I'd been working on for 3 years, or the contracts I'd secured recently, but she kept talking over me, turning the conversation back to my brothers. I could feel the familiar burn rising in my chest. I'd lived in their shadow my whole life. Daniel was the responsible one, Ryan was the brilliant one, and I was just Emma. Quiet, average Emma. At least that's how they saw me. The evening went on, filled with clinging glasses and laughter. Dessert was served, and just as I thought I could get through the night without another jab, my mom's voice cut through the chatter like a knife. Someone had made a joke about who among the kids caused the most trouble growing up, and my mother, without missing a beat, said loudly, "Well, at least Daniel and Ryan made something of themselves. Honestly, she's the most useless child we have." The room went silent. Forks stopped midair. Even my brothers, who usually joined in on teasing, looked uncomfortable. She laughed afterward, like it was just a joke, but her eyes were cold. She meant it. And I knew it wasn't the first time she'd said something like that behind my back. Just the first time she'd said it so boldly in front of others. For a moment I froze. The old me would have laughed awkwardly, let the comment slide, and gone home to cry in silence. But something inside me snapped that night. Maybe it was the exhaustion of years of being dismissed. Or maybe it was because I finally knew my worth. I leaned back in my chair slowly, took a deep breath, and instead of lashing out emotionally, I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the calm, unsettling smile of someone who knows they have the upper hand. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Everyone watched, confused. I opened my banking app, then my expense tracking spreadsheet. Something I'd maintained diligently for years. "You think I'm useless?" I said softly, but my voice carried through the silence. "Then maybe we should talk about what your useless daughter actually does." My mom frowned, clearly annoyed that I was breaking the unspoken family rule. Never confront her in public. "Emma, this isn't the time." I interrupted her. "No, this is exactly the time." I turned my screen toward the table so everyone could see. Mortgage payments for this house? I've been covering 60% for the last 2 years. Remember that kitchen renovation you bragged about to everyone? I swiped to another line. 48,000, paid in full, by me. The whispers started. My aunt leaned in closer, eyes wide. My brothers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My father set his wine down, clearly not expecting this. My mom opened her mouth to speak, but I kept going. "Those luxury vacations you post about on Instagram. Dubai, Paris, Bali. Half of those were charged to the credit card I pay for every month. The BMW you drive, I co-signed the loan and made the last 8 payments myself. Because you said you were short on cash." Her face started to lose color. It was subtle at first, a tightening of her jaw, a flicker in her eyes, but I saw it. I had hit a nerve. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was calm, deliberate, almost surgical with my words. "So if I'm the most useless child you have," I said slowly, "then maybe it's time you stop asking me for money every other week, or pretending like my contributions don't exist because they don't fit into the story you tell everyone. The silence that followed was heavier than any I'd ever experienced at that table. For the first time in my life, I had their undivided attention. The room fell into a stunned silence that felt like a thick fog settling over the entire dining hall. For a brief moment, the only sound was the faint clinking of a spoon still dangling from my father's hand. My mother's words, "You're the most useless child we have," echoed like a slap. But what truly froze everyone was my response. I had calmly unlocked my phone, opened the spreadsheet I kept, and read aloud every single expense I had paid for over the past 3 years. The mortgage payments, the private school tuition for my younger siblings, the family vacations, the car insurance, the renovation of the house, line after line, figure after figure. By the time I finished, my mother's face had lost all its color, and she stared at me as if I had just pulled the floor out from under her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My calmness was more powerful than any shouting could have been. "So," I said finally, locking my phone with a soft click, "if I'm so useless, then maybe it's time you stop asking me for money." For years, my role in this family had been invisible. I was the responsible one, the one who didn't cause trouble, who quietly handled the bills when no one else could. They loved to brag about how well my siblings were doing in their personal lives. But when it came to financial crises, job losses, or medical emergencies, I was their lifeline. And now, standing in the middle of that grand dining room, surrounded by expensive furniture that I'd partly paid for, I realized something profound. My silence had made it easy for them to take me for granted. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Emma," he said, shifting in his chair, "this isn't the time or place to—" "Actually," I interrupted, "this is exactly the time and place." My voice didn't waver. "Because you all seem to think this house runs on fairy dust. You've forgotten who's been holding this family together." My older brother, Lucas, leaned back with a mocking smile. "Oh, please, Emma, you act like we'd be homeless without you." I turned to him. "When you lost your job last year, who paid your rent for 6 months straight?" His smirk faded. "And when you decided to invest in that app that went nowhere, who bailed you out?" He didn't answer. His girlfriend shifted uncomfortably beside him. Then I turned to my sister, Danielle. "And who covered your tuition when your scholarship didn't renew because of your grades?" She looked down at her plate. I wasn't doing this to humiliate them. I was doing it because for the first time, I needed them to see me. All these years, I'd been treated like a background character in my own family's story. Tonight, that changed. My mother's chair creaked as she finally stood up. Her voice trembled, but not from sadness, from anger. "How dare you embarrass me like this in front of everyone?" she hissed. I let out a dry laugh. "Embarrass you? You called me useless in front of the entire family. You started this." The guests, extended relatives who had gathered for what was supposed to be a celebratory dinner, looked at each other nervously. No one dared to speak. My grandmother, who had always quietly supported me, reached out and placed a wrinkled hand over mine. Her eyes, filled with quiet pride, gave me strength to keep going. "This isn't about embarrassment," I continued, stepping away from the table. "This is about honesty. For once, I'm not going to let you rewrite the story." My father stood now too, trying to play the role of peacemaker. "All right, enough," he said, raising his hands. "We can talk about this privately." "No," I said firmly, "because privately is where everything gets swept under the rug." And then I'm expected to show up again with my wallet and a smile. Not this time. I could see the shift happening in real time. The power dynamics that had been in place for years were cracking. They were used to Emma the helper, Emma the peacemaker, Emma who wouldn't dare make a scene. But tonight, that version of me no longer existed. As the dinner dissolved into awkward murmurs and scattered apologies, I quietly excused myself and walked out to the porch. The cold night air hit my face, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free. Not entirely. There was still so much to confront, so many emotional knots to untangle, but it was a start. A few minutes later, the door creaked open behind me. It was my father. "Emma," he said softly, "you blindsided us in there." I turned to face him. "Oh no, Dad, you've all been blind for years. I just turned the lights on," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "Your mother. She didn't mean what she said." "She did," I said flatly. "She meant every word. And deep down, you know it too. You've all gotten used to me being the safety net. Well, I'm done being invisible." For once, he didn't have a rehearsed response. He just nodded slowly, realizing that something fundamental had shifted. Inside, I could still hear the hum of uneasy conversations. Some family members were probably sympathizing with my parents. Others were likely admiring me silently for standing up for myself. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had finally acknowledged my worth out loud. That night marked a turning point. My mother's words had been cruel, but unintentionally, they had set me free. I knew the next days would bring more confrontations, perhaps even guilt trips and emotional manipulation. But now, I wasn't the same Emma they thought they could control. The following morning, the house was strangely quiet. Normally, weekend mornings were filled with the clatter of dishes, my mother's sharp voice giving orders, and the distant sound of my siblings arguing over something trivial. But that day, there was a heavy stillness, as if everyone was walking on eggshells. After the storm that had erupted the night before, I woke up early, not because I couldn't sleep, but because for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to rush into anyone else's chaos. I made myself coffee, sat by the large kitchen window, and watched the soft light creep across the backyard. It was peaceful, and that peace felt both foreign and empowering. I heard footsteps behind me. It was Danielle, my younger sister. She hesitated at the doorway, clutching a mug like it was a shield.
"Hey," she said softly.
"Morning," I replied, not offering much else. She bit her lip nervously. "About last night. I didn't know you paid my tuition. I mean, I knew you helped out, but I didn't know it was that much." I shrugged, taking a sip of my coffee. "I didn't do it to keep score, but you all treated me like I didn't matter. So last night I just stopped hiding it." Danielle nodded, guilt washing over her features. "I'm sorry, Emma, I guess I was selfish." We all were. Her honesty surprised me. For a moment,
She wasn't the self-absorbed
younger sister who treated life like it revolved around her. She looked like someone who was realizing, maybe for the first time, the weight I had been carrying.
"It's not just about money," I said quietly.
It's about respect. And I've spent years earning it in silence while all of you overlooked me.
She came closer and sat across from me. "I think Mom's embarrassed. That's why she got so defensive."
She's not good at being called out. I gave a small humorless laugh. "Yeah, I noticed." We sat in silence for a bit, sipping coffee like two uneasy allies in a house divided. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start, a sliver of understanding. By midday, the rest of the family emerged.
My father called for a family meeting, a phrase that
Usually meant him talking and everyone else nodding. But this time, things felt different. We gathered in the living room, the same place where, countless times before, I'd sat quietly as decisions were made without my input. Now, as I took my seat, I wasn't the silent observer anymore. My mother entered last. She looked composed, but her eyes betrayed the turmoil underneath. She didn't meet my gaze at first. My father cleared his throat, trying to take charge.
"All right," he began. "What happened last night was
unexpected. We all said things we shouldn't have." No, I interrupted calmly. She said something she shouldn't have.
Let's not blur the lines."
All eyes turned to my mother. She shifted uncomfortably, her pride clearly battling with the reality of what had unfolded. I may have spoken harshly," she muttered. "Harshly is an understatement," I replied. "You called me the most useless child you have, after everything I've done. Do you have any idea how that felt?" There was no anger in my tone now, just a cold, controlled strength that seemed to unsettle her more than if I'd shouted. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, searching for words that wouldn't make her look smaller. Finally, she exhaled. "I was angry, and maybe I've taken you for granted. But you embarrassed me in front of everyone." I leaned forward. "No, Mom, you embarrassed yourself. I just told the truth." For once, she didn't have a comeback. That silence was louder than any argument. My father tried to soften the edges. "Emma, your mother and I know you've done a lot for this family. More than we've acknowledged, but this hostility won't fix anything." "I'm not being hostile," I said. "I'm being honest. And for the first time, I'm putting myself first." The words hung in the air like a declaration. My siblings exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't the Emma they were used to. The Emma who quietly picked up the pieces whenever something broke. This was a new version of me. One who refused to keep playing the supporting role in someone else's drama. "I've decided," I continued, "that I'm stepping back from handling your finances. From now on, you'll need to figure things out without relying on me as your safety net." The reaction was immediate. My brother, Lucas, sat up straight. "Wait, what? You can't just—" "Yes, I can," I cut him off. "For years, you all have depended on me without even acknowledging it. That ends now." My mother looked genuinely startled.
"But Emma, the mortgage—"
"Isn't my responsibility anymore," I said firmly. Neither is your car insurance or the vacation fund or Lucas's failed ventures. If I'm so useless, then you'll manage just fine without me. It was like watching a house of cards collapse. They had built their lifestyle on the quiet assumption that I would always be there to catch the financial fall. Now faced with the prospect of standing on their own, panic crept into their expressions. My father rubbed his forehead, clearly overwhelmed. Emma, let's be reasonable. We need time to adjust. I'm not cutting you off overnight, I clarified. But I'm drawing boundaries.
And if that makes me the useless one, then so be it.
For the first time, I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes. Not anger, not pride, but a glimmer of realization. Maybe she finally understood the extent of her words. Maybe she was beginning to see me not as the quiet one, but as the backbone she had foolishly insulted. The meeting ended not with hugs or neat resolutions, but with uneasy silence.
And honestly, that was fine with me.
This wasn't a fairy tale where everything gets tied up with a ribbon. This was real life, messy, complicated, and finally on my terms. Emma, she began, her voice lower than usual, almost careful. I need to talk to you. I put my book down.
All right.
What's going on?
She exhaled slowly, as if gathering courage.
I've been thinking a lot about what I said. About everything, really. I know I've been unfair to you. I stayed silent. I wasn't going to fill the silence for her this time. She had to own her words. I called you useless, she continued, her voice cracking slightly on the word. And the truth is, you've been the opposite of that. You've been holding us together for years, and I didn't want to see it. Maybe because it made me feel small, or maybe because it was easier to keep pretending that I was in control. But I wasn't. You were. For a second, I felt that familiar pull in my chest, the part of me that had always wanted her approval, that had spent years trying to earn scraps of recognition. But I also felt something else, strength. I had waited so long for these words, but I no longer needed them to define my worth. She stepped closer and unfolded the paper she was holding. It was a bank statement, hers. I've started meeting with a financial advisor, she said. I'm learning how to manage things myself. It's overwhelming. But I know I can't keep relying on you like before. That, more than the apology, caught me off guard. For my mother to not only admit her mistakes, but also take steps to change. That was huge. I also owe you an apology, she added. Not just for what I said that night, but for years of taking you for granted. You didn't deserve that. I looked at her carefully. This wasn't a grand cinematic moment where everything suddenly became perfect. It was awkward, hesitant, but it was real. I appreciate you saying that, I replied finally. Yeah, but it's going to take time. This isn't something that gets fixed overnight. She nodded, eyes glistening. I know. And I'm willing to put in that time, if you are.
We didn't hug right away.
That we just stood there, two women, mother and daughter, facing the truth without the old layers of denial between us.
It was the beginning of something new.
Not a fairy tale reconciliation, but a real one built on honesty rather than old habits. In the days that followed, my siblings began stepping up too, albeit clumsily. Lucas got a part-time job to help cover his own expenses. Danielle started contributing to household chores and offered to take over small tasks like paying the utility bills. They were baby steps, but they were steps nonetheless. For the first time, I didn't feel like the family's invisible pillar. I felt like an individual whose role was chosen, not imposed. The true turning point came at my mother's birthday a month later. Normally, the celebrations revolved around her giving orders and everyone else scurrying to make things perfect. But this time it was different. My siblings planned the event. My father handled the catering, and I simply showed up as a guest, not the fixer, not the financier, just Emma. As the evening went on, my mother raised her glass to make a toast. I want to thank my family, she said, looking around the room. Then her gaze landed on me, and especially Emma, for teaching me in her own way what strength really looks like. For a moment, time slowed. The room erupted into applause, my siblings cheered, and my father clapped with genuine warmth, but I didn't cry, nor did I bask in the spotlight. Instead, I smiled, a calm, steady smile that came from finally standing in my own power. In that moment, I realized something profound. I didn't need their validation anymore. The girl who once stayed quiet, who carried everyone's weight, who absorbed every careless word without protest, she was gone. What remained was a woman who knew her worth and demanded it be respected. Later that night, as I walked out onto the porch under a sky glittering with stars, I took a deep breath and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the fragile, temporary kind that comes from keeping everyone else happy, but the deep, unshakable peace that comes from finally choosing yourself. My mother joined me a moment later. She didn't say anything. She just stood beside me, her presence softer than I'd ever known it to be. And for once, that was enough.